Greetings, folks. So this is a video I've been thinking about doing for a while, or something I've been mentioning about double conflictors. So types which are opposite in Keirsey and Socionics. And my contention is that these four pairs, so basically, let's simplify that even more, NTJs and SFJs and NFPs and STPs conflict more than NFJs and STJs and NTPs and SFPs. That's my assertion. So, and we can look at the things over which they will, what they have in common and their sort of differences from a Keirsey point of view. Just don't need to wear these headphones. I might get some questions on YouTube. So this is a very useful dichotomy, directive and informant. And so very far, so these are all conflictor pairs. And you can see that they're directive informant, expressive reserved, or I suppose that would be the social plane of extroverting, expressive reserved. But also it can be expressive in terms of interaction in an environment. I've talked to David Mark Keirsey about that. The Sun. Again, they're abstract speech, concrete speech. And so the premise is that those that talk abstractly over enough situations, you get a large enough sample size, then it's like, oh, this person's probably going to have an abstract thought process as well. And the same premise with concrete speech. Again, you've got to have a large enough sample size in the situations of their speech. So, for instance, you might have a concrete type in an abstract job using the jargon of the job, and you might think, oh, that sounds abstract. Or it might be a concrete type that's in, say, graduate school. That's something that Linda Barron's mentioned, that concrete types in graduate school can sound abstract, probably because of the nature of the material. So for instance, you could have a concrete type study psychology, and again, the language they use will sound abstract. Right. At first glance, we need to hone in. So what else? So you can see no opposite dichotomies for the ENTJ versus ISFJ and INTJ versus ESFJ. And then I've written it down in terms of the interaction style. That a type... Oh, no! Look at that. I've got a typo there on initiator. Oh, dear. Oh, I spelled it. Oh. There, I spelled it right there. There, proof I can spell it. Oh, no. Again, the opposite interaction style, opposite temperament. So you might think, so I frequently don't mention enough about the Keirsey motivations, as in terms of as an essential motivated pattern, all the trust, yearn, seek, prize values and all of that. I usually talk about well, in an INTP way, I suppose. So again, these are like very empirical dichotomies, very empirical word usage, and it gets into more detail than that. It's not just abstract. Oh no, if there's two kinds of abstract. For NTs, it's factorial word usage. So it's like me, that it probably is slanted towards INTP. Yeah, let's get all of the factors that bear on the issue. So it's like me with the integrated topology. Factorial, reference is analytic, and the sequence is deductive. Now, all of those three are like the most true of INTP, but all rationals do those. And then we've got for the NFs, now this might sound a little bit stereotypical, metaphorical word usage. Tamsi is like that, metaphorical word usage. The reference is prophetic, so about the future and what's going to happen. So hashtag NI, intuition of developing. And the sequence is intuitive. Some might argue inductive. So you get quite a bit from word usage. I've lost 3 viewers. Oh dear. Oh, it's going on about Keirsey. But again, this is ways to look at these conflictor pairs. So here's an interesting one. I can speak of that one. INTP, ESFP. So yeah, I'm going to compare. Let's see if I can fit it in. Can I fit in 2 contrasting pairs? Both of them are SE polar. So we have Tin and Finn. Tin and Seth, and Finn and Set. And as you can see here, my contention is that this pair conflicts more than this pair. Because, so, Finn and Tin are both SE averse, SE Achilles heel. And a part of SE is assertive SE. ESTP being directive and expressive, an initiator, in-charge interaction style, is going to press on the Achilles heel of INFP more than the collaborative interaction style of ESFP is going to press on the Achilles heel of INTP. The difficulty with these relations is not understanding each other, but both are utilitarian, so wanting to do it in their own way. Whereas, or what they see as ethical. Whereas you've got this utilitarian, do it anyway at all costs as the first instinct, and then the cooperative way. And again, that varies between idealist and guardian, because cooperative for a guardian is more like by the book, and cooperative for an idealist is more, it's like non-utilitarian, in that it's still like within their values and looking for consensus. And so there's more conflict going on here. Directive versus informer, cooperative versus utilitarian. Both of these are utilitarian and both of these are informal. And also another thing that we can do when we compare these 2 pairs is to compare the predisposed roles. So we have so we've got improvising and constructing. We've also, if you compare designing and composing, it's like pretty similar. One's strategic, one's tactical. Especially if you think about composing a song versus designing a novel. How strategic do you want to be? Difference between remote and immediate, or nearer. Again, difference between tactical and strategic. Again, this gets more into advanced Keirsey in terms of talking about enterprise and inquiry and intersecting roles and interlocking roles. Right, so what else? Again, I don't think, and I do think these conflict more. Like these pairs, like the STPs with the NFPs and the and those NTJs and SFJs. What else can I say about word usage? Okay, so I can say for guardians, how the word usage differs between guardians and artisans. So for guardians, you've got orthodox word usage. And for artisans, it's pictorial. The reference for guardians is frequently quantitative. The reference for artisans is frequently qualitative. So you could say that's going towards the empirical sensory qualities with the SE wheelhouse of the SPs, SE ego types, as Madeleine would have us believe. What else? So, oh yes, in the sequence for artisans is consonant. This is true. They like stuff to sound good. The fighter pilots, US fighter pilots, renaming their aircraft to something that sounds better. Falcon to Viper. Well, at the time they watched Battlestar Galactica in 1978. Lightning 2 to Panther. Thunderbolt 2 to Warthog for the A-10 tank buster. So, changing the name to what sounds better, consonant. A lot of musicians are artisans. A lot of musicians, SP preferences. All right, then, what else can I say? Again, so we've got a bit on, let's go through these. So, initiator, directive and expressive, rational, always like the NT is seeking reason, trusting reason and seeking knowledge. And again, abstract utilitarian corresponds to NT. Then here you've got contender. Difference between these, reserved versus expressive. That's the difference between the two mirror pairs as far as Keirsey is concerned. And again, you've got the mirror pair here with the collaborator and the accommodator. Right. So you can also say from a if you were going to do by quadras, how they are opposed, and then opposing quadras as well, in terms of functions. What have we got? Guardian. Concrete cooperator. Concrete word usage and cooperative in tool usage. Again, opposite interaction style, opposite temperament. So there's a lot for them to argue about. Like SFJ and INTJ. All right, what's SFJ going to say to INTJ? Give us a smile. Well, you have to do it that way. Why don't you do it the way the instructions say? Why do you have to be so clever? Right, Dracula. And then INTJ to ESFJ. What are you giving all this have a nice day attitude for? It's so phony and all this kind of stuff. You're not glad to see me. I have a sense for these things. And right then. And then ESFJ might say, yes, I believe you have had plenty of experience of people not being glad to see you and maybe pretending that they are. Out of politeness. Don't you know? It costs nothing. Anyway, I should be going up with lame dialogue between the two. What else? Yeah, so again, if you wanted to do like pure Keirsey dichotomies, you would say that INTP is IRAU, informing, reserved, abstract, utilitarian. Now let's have a look at this. If we compare ISFP and INTP, one letter difference, concrete and abstract, informing, reserved, and utilitarian. And then you look in the roles, as I said before, composer versus designer. What else? Collaborator, informing and expressive. And there's one in each temperament. So let's have a look at the other temperament. There's another collaborator, ENTP. And let's have a look at the other collaborator there. ENFP. Right. And there's one. ESFP. Right. So that means ESFJ is the only EJ collaborator. The others are EP. And ESTP is the only EP initiator. The others are EJ. Right. Accommodator, informing and reserved. Accommodator artisan versus accommodator rational. Yours truly. So what else can we say? We start then getting into roles. It gets a bit more complex. So one thing I continually stress when thinking about Keirsey, to think of it as a two-headed or three-headed beast. One is the beast in terms of all of the stuff about all of the intellects that correspond to function pairs and triads, or first three positions in Model V. Greetings, Mindbend. So in Keirsey, you got loads of stuff about motivation. Just see that. Then you've got the stuff in Keirsey in terms of diagnostics, words and tools. Then you've got the stuff about the intellects and the intelligent roles. Now, one of the things he did that I would advise he should not have done, and that is to call the types by their predisposed role, because then that leads to the image of, oh, in Keirsey, all ESFPs are actors and actresses and like that kind of stuff. It's like, it's just that they're good at that. It's just a theory of human resources. And so to keep that separate. And so what I've done is I've reconfigured some of Keirsey's terminology, because this is what INTPs do. Van der Hoop resemblers. Van der Hoop changed. He looked at Jung. He looked at Jung's definition of sensation, and he thought sensation is not the only feature of this characteristic of that function, and then he renamed it instinct. 1937. And Van der Hoop was the first person to come up with, I would say he would have come up with the X. So I will credit him for, like, I say TI and X, because he said an introverted thinking type with subsidiary intuitant, and he wrote about how that type 10 uses both NE and NI. And he was even clear with the NFP, or the extrovert of intuitive type with subsidiary feeling. So in terms of roles, and so to separate, and so what you can do is you don't lose anything if you read a Keirsey book. And if you read about his intellects, you can find connections between those and function pairs. So for example, this is the Keirsey intellects related to roles, and they relate to function pairs. In fact, I have a better graphic. No, I don't. Well, that's the one for this is how I've INTP'd up an INTP book. This is Kearney's final book, and it was full INTP. Like he's got it all like into, like, you can see what you can see. Oh yes, and so I did an analysis here of the opposite roles in Keirsey and then what the relations are. And it's like, opposite roles. So what we got here is reconciler and promoter. So what does the promoter have to do? Be a con artist. That would be hard for INFP. The promoter, that is Donald Trump. So not only is Donald Trump got ESTP preferences and resemble SETX, his actual role in life is as a promoter. You know, as a con artist. Right. Although you could argue that he had a lot of a lot of this other stuff as well. What did he call it? Enterprise? Proactive coordinators. Yes. No, there's a new small group. Keirsey came up with a new small group. And I've reconfigured it because he called it adaptive enterprises. And I could, okay, I'm going to use some PUM2 terminology. Utilitarian enterprise, NTJs and STPs. Right then, I have a concrete world example of how an STP manages a business and how they get rid of people quickly. How quickly is Vince McMahon firing people in the WWE in order to like make the profits look bigger because they're probably going to sell the company? Because they've even got rid of the catering in the WWE. So they're like just cutting left and right, and then people are going, "Why'd you cut them for?" They just act first before people can mount to resistance. And so Keirsey made a difference when he talked about utilitarian enterprise. How, say, an NTJ versus an STP runs a business in terms of actions. What are you looking for? Strategic versus tactical. That's what you're looking for. Strategic versus tactical. And look at Vince McMahon. Just like look up something like last minute changes, no long-term thinking. It's all like rewriting shows, tearing up scripts, and last-minute changes. So tactical, Vince McMahon, and he's even enacts the promoter role. Look at Eddie Hearn. There's a Twitter called Eddie Hearn No Context or Eddie Hearn Out of Context, something like that. Out of context, Eddie Hearn, something like that. And again, very ESTP. So look, and so the roles are opposite as well. So the ESTP predisposed to promoting, and then you've got the INFP predisposed to reconciling. It'd be very difficult to sort of enact that role. What have we got here? And then we've got utilitarian inquiry, where we've got again improvising and constructing. That I think that was, did we used to call that as the entertainers? Mentoring and monitoring. Yeah, you can see those are directive roles. You're actually directing people and mediating between people and informing roles. And providing for somebody is not the same as monitoring somebody. And so the idea from Keirsey is that the directive roles are best done by a directive person because they're naturally inclined towards being directive. And so what I did is Keirsey again muddled. He still muddled type with role in his terminology when, I mean, he would talk about the differences, but when he would say something like, so he wrote for the accommodator rational, which is my term for it, in that because he put the strategic accommodator. Well, yes, the accommodator rational is the strategic accommodator, but strategic building is an intelligent role, and you don't want to conflate the intellect with the type. The type is the rational, the temperament. So it's accommodator rational. It's not strategic accommodator, because all types can do all four intellects, which is strategic, building, tactical manipulating, diplomatic enabling, logistical safekeeping. So these are intelligent social roles, and they correlate to usually the top two functions, dominant and auxiliary. So think of TE and NI, practical thinking with intuition of development. A main feature of NI that you can see, intuition of development, or developing, that's verbit. Constructing. Well, I might want to put a bit of TE in there as well, but like TI and NE. And so what we might say is ask ourselves, which functions do these roles draw on? Well, mobilizing resources towards a long-term strategic objective, I'd say NI and TE. Constructing, well, I'd actually say I'll put a little bit of TE in there. Certainly some NI. Yes, if you're coming up with something new. What I meant by constructing was like inventor and designer. So you're coming up with something new. So more like original kind of thinking. So a bit of TI in there. The improvising. There you've got the TI. No. That would be expediting. TI with the SE. So thinking based on the immediate present circumstances, and then feeling with the immediate present circumstances. Very useful in acting. I read the book by Judith Weston. I would have called it Directing Show Players or Directing Thespians. She called it Directing Actors. The advice in there fits artisans. When you act, you put your attention on your scene partner. So that's a little bit like immersing in the present context, being in the present moment, not being self-conscious, not having a self-conscious performance. This is why sometimes kids, you can have a child actor, actress, and suddenly they get a little bit older, they get more self-conscious, and they don't act as well. What else? Oh damn, blanking. Lateness of the hour. Yes, the ability to like really channel a feeling and going really within. Now, some thespians, some show players, English for thespian, cheat by using emotion memory, but that imagination and really drawing from within and really feeling inside. So what is outside is the result of what is felt inside. So, for example, you can't will yourself to do a genuine smile by manipulating the face, but you can change your internal state to fake a smile and it appear genuine. Because this is the thing about the Duchenne smile, where one of the muscles involved that sort of tackles it and does the wrinkle around the eye. So if you channel a happy state, then you can like get that expression that correlates to that. So there's a lot of this like internal inside out acting and that feeling aspect. And so SFP is with the ability to do that and stay in the moment. So ESFP is well set up to act. Now, I would say there are some ENFPs as well, but my writing probably attracts them a bit more because of the NE going on. So it might be overrepresented. I think most of them are ESFP. Look at the way they behave, like the ones in the tabloids. What else? Again, the Keirsey dichotomies, the empirical dichotomies, and the interaction styles that have been seen in other things like social styles and other things. Directive, informer. And then the correlation with directive and informing roles. So, for example, in Christians, like Kristen, ESTJ. Do I need to say female? Kristen rather than Christian. Yeah, Kristen. So her natural predisposition is like to like boss people around, and she's learned not to. So sort of hold back that urge. And so because the ESTJ is naturally expressive and naturally directive, then the role of supervisor just sort of naturally happens. Now, there's a similar thing with INFJ. INFJ is naturally directive and naturally reserved, and the temperament is idealist. And usually, idealists are good at diplomatic enabling. It's a sort of a predisposed interest. Just like statistically, NTs are interested in science. Right, conceptualizing and implementing said thought. Interesting. Can you elaborate on that, Peter? And then I'll get back to you in a moment. Also, super chats are welcome. Right, what else we got? So I've forgotten what I was saying. If anyone out there can remember what I was saying, please write it in the on the YouTube comments. It's within the side of the video. Or you might need to tap something if it's in a mobile device to make it viewable. So, oh yeah, so this is why a lot of INFJ is. So naturally can be sort of like informal counselors. So Keirsey has this very interesting idea of predisposed roles. Now, take it to the next level and then think about somebody, and then think about, and when you're diagnosing somebody's type, and think about, you might think, okay, which roles does this person perform, and do they perform it in the way of the type that you think that they are like, or are they doing it differently? So, for example, if you see someone and oh, this person seems pretty concrete. Oh, as an artist, and you might think, oh, well, like if you rank in the type, then I'll just slot in ISFP for a moment, and then I'll go, oh, seems a little bit by the book. And it's like, oh, it's this artist seems to be like intent on sort of emulating good form and the masters. And it's like, oh, what we got here is we've got a role typical of ISFP, stereotypical of ISFP, being done in an ISTJ way. So people can do atypical things in a typical way. Also, another example of somebody who's has NF interests. So Shannon on this channel, ISFP preferences, got a lot of NF interests in tarot and that, but she does it in a, and I've done a little video with Shannon. It's like Shannon NF interests, something like that, and she sort of explains a bit why she has these interests. So, but yes, I'm going to do another video later. I don't know if I could find. I was going to do a thing like which types seem like they're on loan from other temperaments. I'll give you a preview of that, where like ISFP is the artisan that's most like an idealist, and that's because of the FI. Oh, right, okay, yep. Yeah, and so, yeah, thank you. So that reminds me, so NF's usually interested in the humanities, although there was a YouTuber, Pneumoceptor, INFJ preferences, biologist, and usually SP is interested in, but this is like statistical things. It's like, but then when they get to do something, then it's like an atypical thing in a typical way. So this is about statistical things. I will also say again that what else? Temperament-based dichotomies. Yeah, that utilitarian cooperative, very good for telling the difference between artisans and guardians. Utilitarian cooperative, it really is brilliant for that. Think of the police drama where you've got the detective that's by the book is all about the shoulds. Keyword. You keep hearing someone saying should. It's like they're going towards a, what do they call it in NLP? It's like a lost performative. It's like the lost evidence. What's deleted is why should it be done that way? And it's like, because it's the convention. So watch out for the shoulds by guardians. And the artisans hate being told, oh, you should do it. Jeff hates that. Oh, why should I do it? Oh. Now, cooperative utilitarian for idealists gets a little bit trickier because I suppose what you could say about idealists is that they're non-utilitarian rather than cooperative. So the utilitarian is like that first instinct to sort of do it their way and then ask, is it legal? So with the cooperative, but it's or it's like the present circumstances with the utilitarian way. The best way that fits the present circumstances. The cooperative way for the... So Keirsey wrote about idealists being about compliance. No, guardians, sorry, being about compliance, and idealists being about consensus. But as we know, idealists can do things for sort of FI reasons. Now, what I would say, although there are some NF libertarians, the majority of NFs tend to be leaning towards a sort of a collectivist viewpoint, and that's where the sort of the consensus comes in, and they're sort of like, and it's like maybe they want other people to cooperate with them how it should be done and get with the program, but they're not as compliant as guardians. So that's why the cooperative utilitarian dichotomy works better for concrete types than for abstract types, because the idealists can follow their own individual subjective path, and that can be against the consensus. Right, but they also want other people to get with the program. But again, that's getting into stereotypology about politics and temperament. That's where ENFP can be really... ENFP is like the most type with the most dimensions in terms of like character contradictions, character dimensions, because of that conflict between NF idealism and EP fun and options. So it might be, it's difficult to live up to those NF ideals that they have for themselves, because it might mean not doing that fun thing. And then also with the NFP, you've got FE versus FI as a tension, which comes through as acceptance and approval versus authenticity. And with there being TI polar, they're not sort of going towards a sort of an internally, they're probably not going to see the dimensions within themselves either as sort of contradictions. So yeah, that EP versus NF and acceptance and approval versus authenticity is a... So I'm writing a character, Laura, so many dimensions. Oh, dearie me. It took ages. It's about 20 pages on the dimensions over like 10 categories of dimensions between 4 levels, like social, story role, characterization, true character, which is like the actions somebody takes rather than what they say. So, for example, a charming thief, the charming part would be characterization, the thief would be true character. And then you've got the unconscious, and so all those dimensions. Anyway, I'm digressor. Anyhow, you might see Laura in about... There might be a scene on my channel with Laura talking to her Uncle Pierre. I considered playing Uncle Pierre because he was a bit of a spoof of Michel Foucault, and I look like Michel Foucault. But I'm going to get a proper actor to play him. Anyhow, I set tile for a living. Okay. I established consensus with what the customer wants. Finished. This is good. This is a proper example. Real life examples. I set tile for a living. I established consensus with what the customer wants the finished work to look like, then come up with a way to fit that idea with the dimensions of the room. Right. So the role itself is accommodating, because it's good practice, because it's like the customer is always right. So what are your preferences, Peter? Which type do you most like? I'm interested, because then we can sort of see if anything comes out like, you know what I mean, like atypical role enactment in a typical way, or whether there's not a lot of room for that, because it's like, well, it's just the way you do it. Many types would do it in much the same way, sort of thing. Right. NITX. Okay. So INTJ preferences. The contender rational. Right then. So your that's interesting. When you say you establish consensus with the customer. Right. So you want the customer to buy in. Right. So I imagine another type might say, "Oh, I'm just going to do whatever the customer wants. If it looks hideous, that's their call." But yeah, but like you want to get your bit of in. That's interesting. Here's the cognition of getting ENTJ. Well, it's pretty close. So the difference there is going to be what I would say is energy level, because usually ENTJs are sort of like slugging their guts out and like getting stress-related illnesses. But then again, that could be a lot of people having that just because, or it's like the choice of the ENTJ to sort of get down that route, whereas a lot of people now are sort of in that route when it's not their choice, just to make ends meet. Right, okay, let's have a look. I do sell them on what? Right, okay. Right. So you got a vision there. Yeah. Okay. So I got a video on my channel where someone else who's in a sort of a trade is about a guy on the channel about making fences. And it's something like, is he like ESFJ or something? And I just wondered if you might say something similar, even though, because you were saying that he's watched the way they do fences in Britain in terms of the concrete posts, and they're like H posts, and they do the concrete posts and they put a concrete base down, and then so that like stop the damp going up onto the wood, and then slot in the wooden fence in between the H posts. And so if say the fence is damaged in a hurricane, then just slot in a new wooden fence into the H posts rather than and he's thinking of doing it, of changing his whole system in order to do it in the United States the way they do it in Britain. And then he was thinking about, and he would have to do a lot of changes in terms of getting the post, in terms of getting the concrete H posts. So I did that. I'll just saw your comment come up. I'll just have a look at the video, see which video it is. Quick connect style post. Right, okay. So the video is, that's it. I'll just can I show it? Yeah, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something a bit incestuous. Well, actually, it's not incestuous because it's my actually, I might have trouble. Yeah, I can play this. Yeah, I'm going to play this.
Stay where you are forever. You can move forward.
Wait a minute. So I'm going to play this. Hang on a minute. I'll just get back here. Where did everyone? Wait a minute, folks. I'll be back. Share screen. So this is a video I did with, so Peter, I can get your view on this guy here. Whether like other types would sort of like come to the same.
Right, folks. So this is an example of the relationship between FE and TE being not as simple as you think. And one of the things in Socionics is they will say the TE is business logic. But I'm going to give you an example here of FE in business, and it's from this guy on the left. So let's not play this, see if this works.
The concept makes so much sense.
This is about using concrete posts, concrete fences in the United States, because they don't do it in the United States, but they do it in Britain.
And the reason I'm a big fan of it is because it's good for the customer. It's good for the client. There's still the cost will be different, obviously, but if it's better for the client, if it makes for a better fence, then ultimately it makes for a better industry.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, there's some folks that aren't going to like it in the fitting business, because there's some folks that aren't big fans of steel posts, because their comments are that they make a fair amount of business from repairing and replacing fences. And when they don't have to replace timber posts anymore, that takes away part of their business. I personally think that's the wrong way of thinking about it.
Yeah.
That's, when you think for yourself first, it's generally not good for anybody. Right? It's what's good for the client is good for the industry. I feel.
And moving with the times as well. Like not got to just stay where you are forever. You can move forward.
Right. Well, or you don't, and then you got to figure out something else to do. But I'm a big fan, so we're gonna start figuring this out, and then I do want to take a trip to come see you guys. I do. The more I watch it, the more questions I get, and I learn best from putting my hands on it.
Yeah.
We could talk about it all day, and I can watch a lot of videos, and I'll have a pretty good idea. But there's some things you just learn by touching.
Yeah. So sounds like just cover someone in the concrete. So when they're on over that, we can cover.
Come on over. We got a job for you. You'll learn a lot, I promise. Let me ask, so
There's a bit of instinct going on there as well in terms of learning by doing. And so with that guy on the left, like what he said there, it's like you're talking about what's best for the customer and all of that.
Hang on a minute, that's a bit incestuous. If you want to go watch that video, if you want to, this son and father. Right, so I'll get back to. So yeah, I sort of like I am going to go back to the ground. I'll do a bit of a preview of something. Whilst I've got 6 viewers here, I've got something complicated. I was doing a while back. Well, maybe a year ago. Let's see if anyone's right. So I was thinking about isolating functions via dichotomies. Now, it gets a little bit complicated. Yeah, that's what I thought. ESFP possible, but yeah, an SJ. Yeah, there we go. Put someone on screen when they agree with me, even when they don't. So again, you get into a little bit of sort of like in the weeds kind of Keirsey theory, like so. Concrete adaptability, utilitarianism, STP expediting, and SFP improvising. So concrete adaptability. So you get towards like concrete adaptability, utilitarianism, SDP expediting, SFP improviser. Concrete cooperation, goes towards the guardian temperament, as we said before, concrete cooperators. Right, and then concrete utilitarianism goes towards that, and then if we intersect some other things, directive, NJs and STs, and informing MPs and SFs. Now, I've speculated about sort of like the functional reason why that might be the case. So, for example, if someone's any wheelhouse, they've not really got a particular direction, so they're not really going to be that directive. Well, I don't want to talk about me, but yeah, I was open to other directions and things. But in that, I suppose with the NPs, it's like if someone shoots down an idea, well, I've got another one. There's more of a lane with NJs, and plus they've got the SE as well. So you can say with the SE and the NI working in tandem, you can see why NJs are more directive. And interestingly, the NFJs are the only directive feeling types, and the NTPs are the only informing thinking types. So, as you can say, sociologists would say the SFs are socials, and the STs are pragmatists. Right, then trying to isolate the functions via dichotomies. So, Keirsey dichotomies. Abstract enterprise. Yeah, I came up with that. Abstract enterprise. Because there you've got coordinating and mentoring. So what that is, abstract enterprise, it's going towards a remote goal and it's directive. So we could say that those are dichotomies that correlate to NI. And then you could say abstract inquiry. Keirsey gets very INTP in personology. In that there's areas where he gets a little bit tenuous. It's like, well, he's getting a little bit TI subjective here. Because it's like trying to make the whole thing fit. So it's like his most in-depth book. You probably thought, the heck with it, I'm in my late 80s. I'll do the book the full Keirsey. Personology came out 2010. He died in 2013 and was born in 1921. Abstract inquiry, okay. Informing role, right. Constructing a mediator. Concrete enterprise. Okay, so it's the STs will go towards concrete enterprise, and then concrete inquiry goes towards SFs. Oh, so that's interesting. So it's sort of like it's reversed things, where you get to the clubs. So it would be concrete enterprise to get that, in concrete inquiry, you get to the clubs. So like I said, this is just like sort of a work in, just like trying to get towards something, some thoughts, but knowing it's quite complex and in the weeds, because you need to know these like other concepts that build up to it. Abstract thinking NTJ, okay. Abstract feeling NFs, that's fair enough. And that's fair enough. Concrete thinking, concrete feeling. Enterprising thinking, so directive thinking. So you've got NTJ coordinating, STJ monitoring, and STP expediting. It's going to be enterprising thinking. So these are the thinking types which are directive. And then you've got inquiring thinking, NTP constructing. Enterprising feeling, so directive feeling, mentoring, directive role. INFJ, like, oh, I know, you've got to do it like this. You know, given that, like, Erickson, the hypnotist, Milton H. Erickson, he got, like, you used some tactics. Like, a contender. Keirsey Sr. thought he was a genius, and actually he was, Milton H. Erickson. Get his book, My Voice Will Go With You, and the stuff he does with language that, like, wasn't being able to be captured by Grinder, but amazing use of metaphor. And what it does is Sidney Rosen analyzes the teaching tales to sort of show what's going on. And it's funny stuff as well. Like the one about the farmer. You know how to treat hogs, you know how to scratch them, and all that kind of stuff. Inquiring feeling, right? That's most of the feelers. There we go. Utilitarian thinker. Right. Again, NTPs, STPs, and NTJs. Cooperative thinking, the STJs. Right. And I think I did something about double utilitarians. Utilitarian feeling. SFP. Oh, right. And cooperative feeling for the others. Right. Is there anything? I did some other ones. Whilst you're all here, all six of you, this is what Tom Baker said. So plan to invade the Earth when just about 6 of you. There are others on the way. Right, so I did a what I'll do is, whilst that's up there, I'll show that Keirsey one from the book. There we go. I can try and make that a bit. It's not brilliant that pretty easy to see. I'm just gonna try and find those other Keirsey Barons, the intellects, time. NT is on time. Keirsey intellects. Oh, that was an event I was going to do on. Yeah. What I'll do is I'll switch to that one. I'm just winging it now, so I'll go to another event, another subject, but it's related. I was going to do this. Right, so this is, again, it's conflating the temperament with the intellect. You know, like it's just that artisans are best at tactics, guardians are best at logistics, idealists are best at diplomacy, right? But the other ones can do that. So, for instance, David Keirsey himself was a rational that did a diplomatic role. He was a counselor. But the way he went about it, and then constructing Keirsey temperament. Right, here we go. This is something I did before. This was, going on about Gestalt systems theory, elementalism for Keirsey, and about what sort of like where he was coming from. Yeah, and those are the function pair correlates to the. Yeah, and there I use the. Instead of using compliant rather than I should use that. So this should be cooperative and utilitarian. Those are the terms in Please Understand Me Too. Yeah, so there you can see the. I would say that these are the social plane in the plesp planes. The plesp planes are so how you can see the functions. So there are physiological correlates. There's a physiological correlate in terms of affect display when someone is in FE. And you can say the same with, say, SE. You can say, oh, this person's an SE. How do you know? They're really in the zone. Or you can say there's a physiological correlate to any when it's like certain movements in their eyes. Like, oh, I got that idea that certain things that any DOMs do. Like, it's not, I'm not prepared to go as far as, say, cognitive type, which is like someone raises their eyebrow and is, oh, they're using FI. No. No, someone's like that kind of stuff. It goes way too far. I just want to have something to sell. And I bought that flipping book. And he slagged off Keirsey. So Keirsey was all about actions. It's like loads of Keirsey is about motivation, which is why Linda Berens renamed it to Essential Motivator Patterns. Right, so you're welcome to make comments, you 6 viewers, besides Peter Lentis and Mindbend. So what else have we got? Again, so yes, tactics. So, and you can see that, and the most tactical is going to be ESTP, because it's also FI Achilles heel. So it's like anything, uber expedient, ends justify the means kind of thing. But the most likely to get the problem solved in an emergency. Greetings, Fate. Again, logistics. And you can even say that comes in with Keirsey in with Socionics, with the comfort sensing, especially the providing half of the logistical safekeeper, with those roles, those informing roles of providing and protecting. So protecting roles, sort of like nurse, GP, ombudsman, and again, diplomatic, best at guiding people, best at envisioning. But I like to separate the intellects from the temperament, because the intellects are related to intelligent social roles. What else have we got? Okay, that diagram's been seen before. Oh yeah, here's an example. So that's what Keirsey would name the type logistical collaborator. But like I said, I want to separate it out. Collaborator, guardian. This is the collaborator guardian. So Keirsey would say, so this is for collaborator guardian. And it just happens that logistics is their top suite of functions. So, and the best role for, or the most easily enacted role for the ESFJ, the the FESX, the collaborator guardian, is that of the supplier, because the role of supplier is logistical, and that's usually the top intellect of the guardian, because guardians seek security, and it's logistical safekeeping. And it's an expressive role, the supplier role. More reserved role, the protector role. And so you can see the correlates with the functions. If I go like this, you'll see a little bit more. So, and then again, then the inspector role. So you got the idea there that, so Keirsey would think, now sometimes in the middle it switches around, but he thought that for most guardians, that strategy would be their lowest suit, because it's abstract and utilitarian, and they're concrete and cooperative. Now that doesn't mean that guardians can't do science, because science is mainly ST. And I talked to Dr. Julia about that, the neuroscientist who works on a sort of a chemical level. Whereas the strategic intellect is more about, it's not about science, it's about constructing and coordinating. And you can argue with science is a lot of inspecting. It depends on the various roles in science. So, for example, FAWA, ISTP, MedTech, it's in science. So it's the ISTP way. And then some performer roles. Yes, I can see ESFJ in a performer role, an entertainer, to get that FE response. Right, but this is not sort of like, this is like statistical. So to the right responsible was, yeah, anything underlined in pink is what I think is funny. Oh, and then he says here, there was a bit where he said it would take mobilizing, planning, engineering, designing. Right. But it can be a smaller scale mobilizer. 12%. All right. Wait a minute. The suppliers must be at least, say, 12%. Only a few of them are becoming highly affected in the logistics of supply. Right. Note the steep decline in effectiveness to the strategic arranger. The strategic arranger is the role done by INTJ, which is a role that draws on NI and TE. Arranging contingencies, towards long-term strategic goal. Like how can think, like, it very much correlates to NI minus. Here we go. FE is logistical focus with the biotic living animate. T is logistical focus with the abiotic. Yes. Yes. Yeah, it's yes, objects. T with the objects. And it's like an NTJ is, it's like objects at a strategic level. And the NFJs, it's like people on a developmental level, with that NI, with that intuition of development, as I call it, rather than calling it intuition of time. At one point I suggested calling it intuition of change, but Victor thought it was like change as in like, oh here and oh there and oh there. No, I meant development. So now I get the right word. Yes, biotic and abiotic. Yeah. It's like, again, it's providing, it's the actual providing the sort of resources of life, the beneficent part. You could probably argue that the SFJs are more beneficent than the STJs, but all of them are beneficent, and the NFs are more benevolent. Yeah. Right. So Keirsey had this theory of type and their ability to enact various roles, because that was his focus of attention. What can people do well, and how can he help them in education? That's one of the things that we get on with when I do the events with, oh, here's something you might find interesting. So this is an interesting thing I found where I looked at social benefit rings, and then I looked at the roles in the rings and saw that they were complementary. And so this is like, I can put myself back on. So if you think of the teacher, so when someone's in the educator role, I was just thinking they do like supervise the pupils. I changed modeler for ENTP because it's like, okay, some ENTPs are inventors. Okay, you might say ENTPs make the best inventors, but we can say ENTPs, what role do they usually fulfill, the ENTP? The debater. They're the best at debater, statistically. And then you can say ESFP, the performer. And then I thought, hang on a minute, educator, supervisor, debater, performer. Teachers got to do a lot of those roles. Or if you think of Richard Feynman, what was he called? The great educator, the great explainer. The great explainer. So yeah, these roles seem complementary. And so what I sort of thought was, you got the educator, and then pick one of those four that's complementary, and then pick one of those four, and then pick one of those four, and then you pick the one that's the most complementary, and it's in the same social benefit ring. So there's something to social benefit rings. There's something to them, and Kristen has actually applied this in her teaching, in her tutoring, social benefit rings. And when she gets more evidence, she wants to get a load of evidence. The problem is getting the pupils because of COVID. Once she's got all of the data, then we're going to do the event with Dario and Victor, and then where she's going to show how she's actually used social benefit rings, and to give all the details so Victor can maybe retranslate between systems, especially for the flipping sensory introverts. And yes, I know there were some people out there with, again, there's like various type image things in humanitarian socionics where when you get more into the weeds of it with the subtypes. And again, advocator and promoter, that's very similar. I mean, promoter of schemes, advocator of a cause, mobilizer of resources, and then the supplier of resources. So you see the complementarity here. And so there's definite complementarity between the if we overlay the Keirsey roles onto the superego pairs, then you get this weird complementarity of roles. This is where it gets complicated with like SLI and IEI, because it's like it depends how you translate it to like craftsman. Because like if you see SLI as ISTP, because that would be called the crafter, or if you see it as ISTJ, inspector, but then you can say, hang on a minute, well, the role of counselor, well, they have to like sort of like find out, has the client done what you suggested, like investigate the problem. The craftsman with the lyric poets, you have to stretch a little bit more with this when it gets to the introverts. And then, but there, look at that, composer with designer. Very complementary. Very complementary. It's just the difference between tactics and strategy. Like, think of the novelist, the songwriter and the novelist. Isn't it sci-fi? They're doing a long saga. What have we got here? Tamsy counsels and writes poetry, good at counselling and the arts, especially. Right, okay. Though she might be ISFP. Inspecting essay, same as Keirsey. Yeah, quite a few Keirsey ISFPs might type as IAI in Socionics because there's no real equivalent of ISFP in Socionics. And then they might be wondering, well, why don't I like these STPs that much? Well, it's because maybe you might be an ISFP resembler. Yeah, that's Keirsey intellect, social plane of Jungian function triads. Yeah, we might do that. With the functions that correlate. Did I strategic building, abstract utilitarian? Yeah, I'm trying. Here we go. Yes. This is how the Fisher's water comes in. The modest servant. Like how I think. Like there we go. SETX. So these are the artisans being tactical, and then this is the SE involved. And we're trying to correlate this to the role. SE with TI, expediter promoter, expediter crafter, improviser performer, improviser composer. Okay, and logistical when blocked thus, TE with SI, supervisor. But then also you got SE in there. Enforcing the rules. Keirsey wrote about enforcing the rules. And then with so this is, I spoke to someone about this, who talked about her brother. They want to improve the system. The ISTJ, they believe in the system. It's like the authorized system. It's not their own system, but they want to improve it. And so that might be an example of how ISTJ uses TI to improve the approved of system, the authorized. So it's like, again, so the ISTJ is by the book, but they might want to improve the book. So that might be how they use their TI, to improve the book. But it's still going with what is, because the guardian is seeking security and trusts authority by default. Logistical, and doesn't that monitor, provider, supervisor, provider, protector, right? SI with FE, yeah, FE with SI, a little bit of S, maybe a little bit of SE in there. Anyway, so I did tactical initiator. Oh, I called it tactical initiator, but if it's going at the flipping types, I shouldn't have called it that. I should have called it initiator, artisan, contender, artisan, collaborator, artisan, accommodator, artisan, initiator, guardian, contender, guardian, collaborator, guardian, accommodator, guardian. But if we're talking about roles, then a tactical initiating role that is best performed by the initiator artisan. So again, thinking about type versus role. And it's just that Keirsey was very interested in what people do well in order to help them to get into the best line of work. Promotes business schemes, you could say, with the TE in ESTP. Visual spatial imagining, so maybe that's the speculation about how ISTP uses SI, how ESFP uses FE, emotes to serve performance, accommodator, sensory imagining to compose, so I might use SI, especially the imaginative subfunction. Initiator, again, enforces procedure, how it uses SE. The contender analyzes to inspect, okay, and probably improve the system, as I mentioned before. And FESX takes action to supply. SIFX empathizes to care about physical needs of others. So that's going to be that combination of SI with FI. So that's just my speculation about how the third function the fish's water is used in the modest servant is used in basically the demonstrative function in Model A. So yeah, this is that function, the modest servant. TE in the STP, SI in ISTP, FE in ESFP, SI in ISFP, SE in ESTJ, TI in ISTJ, SE in ESFJ, FI in ISFJ. Yeah, and that's the features of instinct: sensation, emotion, action, knowing, kind of knowing. Right, I did those notes in Dibley. Oh, right, the Keirsey temperaments over the centuries. Hey, this Paracelsus, apparently like a massive head. He said he was just like Theophrastus von Hoheim. Apparently, he called himself Paracelsus because he thought he was better than Celsus. I don't know. No, so we have to take Keirsey's word for it that he's not sort of like cooked the books in terms of like what each one of these said. But a lot of these are quite recent. Like, look at these Germans, Adekes. I assume it's Adekes, Sprenger, Kretschmer, Fromm. Look at that, all those. And again, proprietary, melancholic, industrious, tradition. Right. I'm not so sure that ESFJ is that melancholic, but it's the thing that put on a. Right, so that's not. I don't know about that. I mean, usually like pretty happy people, ESFJ. Again, sanguine, yeah, that fits, and hedonic, that fits, artisan, and ethical, dialectical, yeah. Right. Kretschmer. Yeah, that's a little bit tricky, that because he may have been. The thing is with Kretschmer is that he thought he was describing introverts, but he might have been describing intuitives. So, but he himself thought he was describing introverts. Funny book, Kretschmer's Physique and Character. Right. So, basic dimensions of personality. What we got here? Right. So yeah, from Please Understand Me Too, it's got a good balance. Please Understand Me Too, where it's like it's not too INTP as a book. So I suggest you read that before personality. There's good stuff in it. There's a whole section on intelligence and leadership at the back of the book. Yes. Well, no, I haven't read it, but I have the book. Now, do you know who he is, Stephen Montgomery? Do you know his relation to David Keirsey? Senior. He's his son-in-law. Yeah. And he actually contributed to the Please Understand Me Too. Some of the profiles. I think INFJ preferences for Stephen Montgomery. All right. Oh, subtypes. He talks about subtypes. How does he do subtypes? So anyway, yeah, I got that book, and he has examples from like movie characters. Yeah, I got that book. It's somewhere in here. I do have the book. Yeah. Honestly, I do have it. Yeah, because that's where I got that grab from. Yeah, no. Yeah. In the family now. What have we got here? So the language, and again, the words goes into much more depth. The words in what's that doing? Right. Not, mind you, the habitually cooperative persons don't care about useful and effective tools. Certainly they do. But they consider the effectiveness of tools as secondary to whether they should be used or how they will be regarded by others. In other words, whether they are socially acceptable or morally correct. Yeah, that's more for guardians. Right, and that's sort of like the dichotomies of the temperaments. But the temperaments are mainly about motivation. This is just the words and tools of the temperaments, sort of the diagnostics. Words and tools, right? And that's sort of what I was using in that sheet. Mind back. What's that? Intuitive. Yeah, this is where I don't really like agree with him about like the overlap between. There is some overlap between introverting and intuiting, but then he said here, in considering the contrast, please bear in mind that Jung and Myers were trying to figure out what the types have in mind, whilst I am trying to figure out what they do well under varying circumstances. Right. And again, the intelligence types versus the function types. Oh yeah, entertainer. So entertainer was changed to improviser. Conservator was changed to provider, and administrator was turned to monitor. Advocate was changed to mediator, and then advocator was given to ENFP. Engineer was changed to constructor. Oh, and coordinator stayed the same. These INTPs should really stick with the same terminology. But they always want to improve the system. To hell with marketing. Right, what we got here? Right, anything else? Right, yeah, so this is the contents page from Personology. Again, it doesn't use any of the 4-letter terms in this. So I think they was worried about the MBTI people suing him. So I thought, oh, to hell with it. And he just went full Keirsey. And again, this is a redo of Brains and Careers, because that was a rushed book. So really, this should be called Brains and Careers 2. And so, again, though, I wouldn't say that the Guardians are the logistical safekeepers, because logistical safekeeping is a separate task. It's just a task that the Guardians are usually best at. Yeah. Oh yeah, and another Keirsey table. Sort of changing his terminology again. What have we got? If I Dionysian. Yes, Keirsey 78. Like Epimethean, Apollonian, Dionysian, Promethean. Yeah. Right. I want to try and get right. So again, all the stuff with the motivation. Yeah, this is where it gets a bit INTP, like adorning covers. Like, it's some funny stuff in there. It's like, well, you've gone really INTP. Where's Stephen Montgomery to edit your book? Right. The word usage stuff is very good. Again, benevolent versus beneficent. It's not got as much as the Trust, Yearn, Seek prize in there. It makes me a bit like want to be, need to be. Yeah, bonded. Yeah. Adventurous. Autonomous as in thinking for itself. Right. Oh, and then sort of like maybe thinking about it with the 7 kinds of intelligence plus some advocacy for ecology. I mean, you could just as well put money in there as a form of intelligence. Like financial brain, like, but it's okay. But these ones, like, so for example, this really correlates to FI. Really does. Make authentic choices. Reflection. Heavily correlates to FI. And this with like FE, interpersonal. Musical is a little bit like a separate thing. Like, you get a lot of artisans in music, but you can also get NTs, like all sorts, really, for musical. Like for instance, you could have the Guardians that are willing to like go through all of the practice and like bodily kinesthetic, yeah, that goes towards concreting, concreting, yeah, like instincting. You're usually better at this, the concrete types, and in visuospatial, yeah, like I would imagine like ISFP, ISTP. And the brain activity shows it. The back of the brain, highly active in those types. And then logico-mathematical. NTs are usually good at this because what they're interested in draws on that and then it gets trained up. So preference, practicability. And then usually linguistically, usually it's the NFs. Usually the NFs when it comes to linguistics. Right. There are a lot of SE examples in this. Well, I suppose so, because it's like, what, for bodily kinesthetic? Well, yeah, I mean, it's like that realm of like extroverting, instincting, I would say. Yeah, a lot of SE. It's like the cliche about builders. Although, you know, we have Peter here. It's like it's atypical things in a typical way. It's not just, you know, varying role enactments. People enact various roles. So that is a way to help. Maybe like if you want to try to persuade people about functions, is to say, well, these things exist, and FI is like this. So as you can say, well, if you believe in this, well, the extent to which FI is like this, then means FI might be a thing, so to speak. Oops, that one. A verb. Oh, I did that one. Looks like I've gone through them all. 8 people. Oh, wait a minute. So you 8 people, you're willing to write 7 people. Yeah. If you want to do super chats or anything in the side. Let's see what other ones I have lined up. That's interesting. I had stuff in here about FE and FI. But mainly I want to make this a Keirsey one. That's a lot of stuff on FE and FI. And that would be sort of changing the nature of the event. Diplomatic collaborator. No, that's not right. It should not be diplomatic collaborator. It should be collaborator, idealist. Because diplomatic enabler is not the type, it's an intelligent role. Collaborator, idealist, right. 8 Keirsey faculties. What's this? Oh. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, that's not fully thought out. Best fit type. Yes, best fit type. This is on Dario and Linda's website. So share. Now Linda's sort of simplified Keirsey because like what she made materials for courses. So I suppose a more in-depth book of hers would be Interaction Essentials, and then she did a good functions book that's hard to get a hold of. I'll say linguistic is very NE valuable. Okay. Thank you, Fate. Well, you see, INFJ can be very good at writing. Like you should again, Erickson and like INFJs can be very good at writing. I mean, like those INFs, especially when it's like novels and it's getting inside a character. So you can see here, like you can ask people. So if you're going to diagnose someone using, so this is the stuff about Keirsey. It's about the core needs. Now Linda Behrens tends to simplify it a little bit too much, where like the NFs can sound very 4-ish, and the NTs can sound very 5-ish. But that sounds pretty good. That opening line. That you see how the bit of the 4 gets in there? A sense of a unique identity. Again, unity, self-actualization, and authenticity. Prefer cooperative interactions based on ethics and morality. Right, so what I know, she had a hard time deciding between this one and this one. And she eventually chose this one. And it made me think, she's probably an ISFP 4. So if you're an ISFP 4, and then you see have a sense of a unique identity, then you might think, oh, that sounds like me. So an ISFP 4 might think they're an idealist. Like it's like what the corner is: freedom to act without hindrance and see a marked result from action. People as temperament highly value aesthetics rather than attend towards pragmatic utilitarian actions with a focus on technique. They trust their impulses. Trust their impulses. That's right from Keirsey. I censored what it was because that's like tactical skill set, because I didn't want to bias people when they select them. So this is a way where people can type themselves. And isn't it interesting that when you pick a temperament and then pick an interaction style, that you actually end up at the same place that Jung ended up? So that you get, for example, if you get for INTP, mastery of concepts. This sounds a bit E5-ish. Again, you've got Behrens' INTP preferences. Learn to even develop theories for everything. So it might slant towards INTP. Logical consistency. That's what's recommend the utilitarian action with technology focus. Yes, they trust logic above all else. Skeptical highly value precision is language. Their learning style is conceptual. And the underlying principle generate details, facts, more than the other. Yeah, so that's very like INTP. Again, Behrens as INTP resemble preferencer. So then if we intersect that with the interaction style, right, getting things accomplished through people. So this is collaborator. Behrens' terms for this is get things going. Complementary collaborator. Persuading and involving others. Oh, wait a minute, that's not right. Ooh. Accomplishing things through people. Right, no, this is in charge. This is in charge. How do I know this? Look at the roles. Behrens is influenced so much by Keirsey. Mentoring. Remember the role of ENFJ? Mentoring. Executing actions. That's the expediter. Supervising. That's ESTJ supervisor. Mobilizing resources. That's the ENTJ mobilizer. Yes, this is in charge. This is the initiator. Proactive enterprise. Preemptive initiation. So we just to learn all that personality jargon. Persuade and involve. This is get things going. This is complementary collaboration. So this is ESTJ, ENTJ, ENFJ, and ESTP. This is ENTP, ENFP, ESFJ, ESFP. The collaborators. So collaborator, artisan, guardian, idealist, rational. Initiator, artisan, guardian, idealist, rational. Getting the best result possible, understanding and working with the process to create a positive outcome. Course of action to follow. Okay, so this is more directive. So if you intersect that one with the other one, then you get to INTP. Or the introverted thinking type with subsidiary intuitor. So this is the rational temperament, the NT temperament, or rather the rational temperament with sort of correlated NT club. And then with this one, and then if you choose this one, getting the best result possible, it's start on understanding and working with the process to create a positive outcome. Many contributions, so it's like informing and integrating, and consult outside inputs to make an informed decision. They aim to integrate various information sources. Keirsey, Socionics. Enneagram, Van der Hoop, Jung, integrate the various inputs, integrate various information sources, and accommodate different points of view. The approach, like Jeff doesn't agree with me many a time. They approach others with a quiet, calm style that may not show their strong convictions. A little bit of truth coming out there from Barons. Producing, sustaining, defining. Here we go. Producing, sustaining, defining, clarifying. Producing, that what was that, like ISFJ? Defining, INTP, clarifying for INFP. Because she's got names like harmonizer, clarifier for INFP. Are all the ways that support a group's process. They typically have more patience than most with the time it takes to gain support through consensus for a project or to refine the results. So this bit about integrate various information sources. Integrate various information sources. So that's a feature of the accommodators, the behind the scenes, the accommodators. So accommodator, artisan, ISFP, FISX, accommodator guardian, ISFJ, SIFX, accommodator idealist, FINX, INFP, accommodator rational, TINX. And then this is chart the course. Now, this may sort of fall down when it comes to ISTP, but definitely INTJ, ISTJ, and INFJ are chart the course. Yeah. Right. Now, here we go. Some of these keywords. Analyzer. So that might be go towards INTJ. Foreseeing. The foreseer, that's INFJ, and then it's sort of like how she... Yeah, Dario like came up with names for the Barons types and trademarked them. Even though like a lot of them sound like Keirsey names. They really do. Let's have a look at the trademarked names that Linda Barons and Dario came up with. Literally trademarked. Literally trademarked. There, you've got like motivated presenter. Alright, so I'm going to show this on screen. Maybe climax with this if I'm not going to get any questions. On topic questions. Right. Composer producer. There, composer producer. Oh, I wonder where she got the name composer from. But she's very good though at, like, gives loads of credit to Keirsey. And people know about Keirsey because they looked at Linda Barnes' work. Here we go. David Keirsey for continuing to bring clarity to my understanding of people and introducing me to systems thinking. Right, so let's have a look at these names of the types. Oh, good on webcam. So let's look at these names. Promoter, that's a Keirsey one. I think yes, I've highlighted all of the ones which are Keirsey terms. Composer, supervisor, inspector, protector, mobilizer. Yeah, mobilizer. Now, some of them might have come afterwards. So this book was before Personology. So it's like Linda Bones might have got in there with mobilizer before. Keirsey, and then got Explorer, Inventor. Yeah, so what Dario said was with these names, he was trying to get the inside and the outside of the type. The inside and the outside. You got there the clarifier, there, harmonizer, clarifier. Discoverer, advocate, foreseer, developer. Yeah, is that NI there? That foreseer, envisioner, mentor. Again, mentor role. But you see, the thing is, they're like, they're calling the types after the role, and that's not good. Because people will say, oh, you're talking about stereotypes. You're saying all ISTJs are inspectors. It's just really a nickname. So, like I said, a better name would be to say for this, like initiator idealist, or if you want to say in charge idealist or in charge catalyst. Get things going, catalyst. So you can see the influence of Keirsey there. Temperament matrix. Right, so she redid a few. Oh, here we go. 4 interaction style patterns. So these are developed from Keirsey dichotomies. Support the groups. Why have I done that? Those colours aren't right because I use green for idealists. Right. You see the problem here. Deliberate decisions keep group on track. Like that doesn't work that well for ISTP, TISE. But it works like 3 out of 4. So I say, oh, it's not bad. In charge, yeah, they all are. Get things going. You know what these all are like. So Keirsey's name of contending for all these 4. They can get contending, can't they, those INFJs? Behind the scenes, accommodator. So what can happen is if someone's got a 9 in their tri-type, trifix rather. I don't believe in the type when it comes to Enneagram. Right, what we gonna? What type would you? What do you mean? What do you mean? Switch the ISTP with? What do you mean? You mean in terms of that one for planning? Like, no, it's just the way it's thought about. It's tricky because ISTPs can get like that. Yeah. Again, contending. They are contender. So that does work for that. It depends how much you go to. There's a slight difference in emphasis between Keirsey and Behrens when it comes to the interaction styles. So I asked David Mark Keirsey. They don't actually have a name for it. Linda Behrens has a name for it, the interaction styles. And so I asked him, okay, what's your name for this group of 4 things that you call collaborators, accommodators, initiators, and contenders? What is those 4 things called? They haven't got a name for it, so we use the Behrens term interaction styles. So the Keirsey emphasis, by the time he got to personology, was more on sort of social roles, and in Behrens is a little bit different in emphasis. So it's like, for Keirsey, it's like the accommodators are best suited to, those that are naturally accommodating are best suited to responsive accommodating roles. And then those responsive accommodating roles are improviser, composer, protector, reconciler, designer. And the other roles, I'll try and show off. I'll close my eyes and speak it all out. What are the roles? The collaborating roles. Closing the eyes. So the artisan collaborative role is the performer. So the guardian role is the provider supplier. The idealist collaborator role is the advocator, mediator advocator, and the rational collaborator role is the modeler or inventor, but like most of them are better at debater. Then we've got the in-charge roles. So it's an interesting way of thinking about it. What type would you switch to? Yeah. So yeah, ISTP is a funny one. In that I suppose to understand ISTP, it's like watch that channel Celibate. It's like Celibate, and see what an ISTP 9 is like. Yeah, oh, what's got his name? He's been around a long time. He's got a video. He's got a very good visual sense. Like lots of like fancy like he does like he puts effort into his videos in terms of director, camera moves. And he's got a video called like why ISTPs don't like Twin Peaks, and he says he thinks it's the NE that they don't like the NE. And yeah, and so it's a way because some people might peg him as ISTJ, and it's like no, he's a 9 and he's religious and he's of a Far East Asian background. Trying to find the right terminology. And he's done videos about his ESFJ mother. Right then, at 9 minutes past midnight, I think I'll stop. Right then, I'm going to retitle this video, maybe put the end, and then Ben rambles. But a lot of Keirsey today, I suppose. Put that back. Oh, I have something for you. For all the Uber NTs or Uber smarties out there who really want to give their brain a. I've not studied this book yet, and I doubt I will. But here's this Dario told me about this book. This guy really NT'd it up. So Walter Lowen, now he was a physicist, and wait a minute. Let me go back to this one. Let me get that off the screen. No offense. So, and he knew. So Walter Lowen, here we go. So he did a really mechanistic model of Jungian type. Now, I would say it got a little bit simplistic with the parts of the brain. So what we got here, like very sort of mechanistic. What have we got here? That's quite complicated. That's okay, Fate. This is for the others not watching the chat. But yeah, it's just like if you've got like people out there interested in this kind of like, say it's like they've got a kind of like work in an area like this, then this might be sort of like complement because some of it's a little bit old, this book. So like some of the stuff on like the lateralization is not accurate, but inputs and outputs and some of the bits. So you've got like again, it's like really NT'd it up. Like okay. Is it like what does it say? A system science explanation. So again, system science, systems theory. Right. At least he's got the like clubs in there. Yeah. So what do we got? And then that's to show about the regions, transactions. Right, and he's coming up with his own right symbols and what the hell? Right. Left brain again, all this stuff with like left brain, right brain. It's not that simple in terms of the division. Like Dario sort of shown that it's not like again, really sort of like right, all the socionics people out there who like complexity, get a load of that. Right, so really sort of NT'd it up. If only it will focus. There we go. I got a webcam with autofocus for this very reason. Yeah. So yeah, very mechanistic. But I think he knew Carl Jung's grandson. I think he read something about. Here we go. There it is. While studying for my doctorate in nuclear engineering at the ETH Eidgenössische Technische Hochschule, or Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in Zurich, I first became acquainted with Dieter Baumann, a practicing psychoanalyst and grandson of Jung, through whom I developed an interest in the works of his grandfather. And so when did this book... So this was sort of updated, but... 2006, but it was sort of like originally it came out in like the early 80s. We've got some of the stuff at the bloody hell. Okay. It's just the stuff with the lateralization. Okay. But maybe it might be one of these things to look at where you go, like, to those people like really in this kind of stuff, you might go, oh, I can see where it's going wrong, but maybe to do it like this, if you wanted to come up with your own mechanistic model, and it might be in like if you're in that kind of area where you have this kind of thinking going on. I mean, I was going to include this in a functions book, then I thought, bloody hell, like, there's not much point because like I would have to put so much effort in to understand it properly, and then I wouldn't be able to explain the book. And then, especially with that like copyright issue coming in, and then it's like, well, it's just a small audience trying to explain something so complicated in such a short area. Yeah, it's the lateralization. It's the stuff where he like, right. So this is an example of how sort of esoteric it can get. It's sort of building up a language of. But like I said, if you already have, like, so for instance, Dario, because Dario was sort of working in this area because like he like taught complex systems, so he was aware of this model from Walter Lowen. Yeah, there's some more. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to show too much. Like all these so-called mind maps for the. What we got here? The model in the Myers-Briggs type indicator. Oh, what's that one there? Level diagram for INTJ. There you go. The INTJ's out there. Blimey, that's a complex one. The one for INFP. And the INFP is might be saying, I told you it was complicated. Right. Level diagram for INTP. Yeah, I'm not going to spend my time analyzing this. It's not, the cost-benefit analysis is not in its favor. Individuation, yes. So I read it. But again, if someone's actually like interested in that field of, if they already have an interest in systems theory and personality, then that would be like a good book maybe for you, because like to see where the person, to see where he went wrong, where it went wrong and where it went right. So you could sort of like compare that to Dario's research. It's just this stuff with like, it's just a little bit, yeah, it's tricky. At the moment, I'm reading this. Cinematic Motion. It's page 151. I've read shot by shot. And then after I've read that, I'm going to read movie storyboards, and then I'm going to do my storyboards for 2 scenes. We may put it on the channel in a reduced state with storyboards and rehearsal footage, obviously, and then it would be the proper one would be done when the actors can travel to London to have the scenes recorded. That would be in months' time though, because there have to be like 6 episodes done together. Yeah, so that's that Wilma's Housemates project. So hopefully I aim to justify the title of the channel. Right then, I better go. Yeah, keep it under 2 hours so that it backs up on Odyssey. Bye bye, folks.